name, your preferred pronoun, preferred language, your organization, a title if you'd like to share that, and what brings you to this event. So please feel free to just start introducing yourself. And if you do need interpretation, I will start giving instructions, but we will also repeat this information in the chat. So we'll be doing this mostly in English, but everyone will need to access the interpretation function. Is that correct, Caitlin? Do we all need to go into the English channel? I'm not sure about that. I believe if you need Spanish, then the interpretation function is only applicable to you in terms of accessing the function. So look at the globe icon at the bottom of the screen, and you need to select Spanish. Couple of announcements. We will be recording this event. If you do not want your identity revealed, please turn off your video at the bottom left of the screen and use some sort of fake name or initials. And you can change your name on the little dots next to where your name is. And for security purposes, everyone, I believe, will be muted automatically. So you may have to unmute yourself when you speak. And feel free to ask questions in the chat throughout, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A period. That being said, I will get started as people stream in with more of an introduction. Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you so much for being on this Zoom call today. I want to say being here, but here virtually has a new meaning. Happy Friday, and we're really, really excited about today's program. Thank you again for attending. My name is Eva Seidelman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the legal and cooperative development consultant with Cooperative Catalyst of New Mexico. I'm also an attorney. And my colleague here one of my colleagues is Caitlin Kundrat. She'll be helping with the chat and some other technical things. So feel free to ask her any questions in publicly or privately through the chat. And then a few other of my colleagues, I believe from Co-op Catalyst, are here. Maybe some of you have introduced yourself in the chat. If you want to wave, and feel free. I don't know I'm not looking at the screen, honestly, so I can't tell who's here or not. But if anyone from Co-op Catalyst wants to introduce themselves today, feel free to do that in the chat or just say hi. I think in particular, we have Sandra McCardle, who is our coordinating director, and I know Robin Seidel introduced herself. Mary Noblock, I will introduce later, who will do some of our presentation. So, and then again, if you weren't here at the very beginning, please, everyone who's streaming in, introduce yourself in the chat with your name, pronoun, preferred language, English or Spanish, your organization and title, if you'd like to share that, and what brings you to this event. So I do want to start with a tradition of a land acknowledgement. This is very important. I think it should be important for everyone, but it is particularly important for us at Co-op Catalyst because we do work a great deal in Native communities. And we have So we really truly believe in recognizing the native land that we're on and have committed to that. So we would like to acknowledge that this virtual event is taking place on occupied Tiwa land known as Albuquerque, the closest pueblos or tribes being Sandia and Isleta pueblos. We are grateful that they have stewarded this land so that we can enjoy it today. As we work together to build a more just society, it's important to acknowledge our own place in the story of colonization and to amplify Indigenous voices whenever possible. We don't pretend to know the answers in undoing the ugly legacy of colonization, but at the very least, we can be accountable and deepen our understanding of our individual and collective responsibility in the struggle for change. So a little bit about today's agenda and a little bit of context. So today's session will focus on how cooperatives can be a tool to improve the livelihoods of people with criminal convictions who face rampant employment discrimination, including here in New Mexico, and maybe especially. Men with criminal records accounted for over 34% of the unemployed prime working age men surveyed in a 2015 poll, and the statistics are far worse during economic downturns. No job, a bad or unsupported job, or a feeling of disempowerment on the job often leads people back to the kind of work or activity that is criminalized, which then leads to incarceration or re-incarceration. Believe it or not, New Mexico's prison population grew by 481% between 1980 and 2016, according to a report by the ACLU. So you can imagine how many people with criminal records will be looking for work in the upcoming years as they are released from prison. And I know a lot of people on this call today, this is not news to you. So please do introduce yourself because if anyone's interested in learning more, there are a lot of experts, I believe, on this, and we are not the experts. And as many of you know, this is very much a racial justice, an injustice issue with Black, Latino, Latinx, and Native people disproportionately impacted. So today we'll talk about how the cooperative business model, again, can provide formerly incarcerated people with quality work opportunities and a voice on the job and in a business. So Mary Knobloch, our Cooperative Catalyst training consultant, will first provide us with an introduction to cooperatives and the Cooperative Catalyst of New Mexico. And then I'll turn it over to our very, very special guest, Joseph Cureton, Cureton, apologize for not pronouncing your name correctly, who we're so lucky and grateful to have join us from Baltimore. And he will talk about Core Staffing, a returning citizens company he helped to found, and its parent company, Obran Cooperative. He'll explain that model. And please do ask questions. So we have a good chunk of time for his piece. And this is a really unique and successful model. After Joseph, I'll turn it back over to Mary, who will tell us a bit about a few other returning citizens cooperatives in the US and around the world. And then I think we're just going to spend the remainder of the time answering some of the questions we received in advance and the questions that you ask in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, that's fine as well. So now I will go ahead and turn it over to Mary Knobloch, our Cooperative Catalyst Education and Training consultant.
Hello, hi. Thank you all for coming today. I'm going to go over a little bit of what CNM does and then what cooperatives are for those people that aren't super familiar with them. So at CNM, we do a lot of outreach, such as today's meeting, and we do technical assistance to help people from their idea of a co-op all the way to in business and even onto an alumni program for co-ops to help other new and rising co-ops, creating an ecosystem, which is the third on this slide, So we connect a lot of different groups and people. Sometimes two co-ops will kind of have the same idea on what they want to do. So we can introduce them and then help them through the process of incorporating into a co-op. So what is a cooperative? Some people are only familiar with cooperatives through maybe their bank or through the grocery stores in their area, or similar things. They may not even know they're part of a cooperative. There's a lot of big corporations that are cooperatives that you might not know: Sunkist, REI, many others. So it's an organization that comes together to jointly own and democratically govern a business. So it's a different model than a small business or a corporation. And the decision-making control is by the owner members. The ownership is by the members, and the distribution of profits is based on how much they're using the co-op, what they're giving into the co-op, such as services such as remodeling, or actually producing something, art or vegetables. And also they're all coming together to invest in the co-op financially. So members contribute to the co-op and receive benefits from. And as I was saying, there's many different co-ops and many different businesses. The profits are shared based on each member's contribution to production, sales, hours worked, or a combination of the three. Cooperatives are guidelined by cooperative principles. They were created by the International Co-op Alliance, and they incorporate the principles, values, and cultures unique to their members. So these are the suggested cooperative principles. They're currently being updated to be a little more relevant to today's economy and today's principles. But some of the ones that are really stand out to me are the democratic control. So you have members who are making controlled decisions in the co-op rather than a CEO or a board in some other state making those decisions. And also the concern for the community. Many co-ops give back to their community. They provide, resources for community members to become a part of their co-op, or receive some of the benefits of becoming a co-op. So these principles are very important, and we all try to strive to make sure we're aligning our vision and mission with these principles. So one thing that's different with co-ops, and it's a very important one, is democratic member control. One member, one vote. So instead of your senior board deciding what happens with everyone, with the company and where the money goes, every member of the co-op has a vote in what's going to happen. And that the vote participation goes in different levels. So if you are kind of just a consumer of a co-op, you may have some vote participation, but all the member owners who are part of the co-op usually have some kind of vote, and it's one member, one vote. So no one who owns the majority of the share can make those decisions like in a normal corporation and in a normal small business. So what are the co-op benefits for returning citizens? I know there's more than 2.2 million people in the United States who are in prison. Worldwide, that number is up to 9 million who are incarcerated. The United States has the highest prison rate in the world, with 724 people per 100,000 imprisoned. Another 600 are on probation or parole. So some of the benefits for returning citizens would be, what's listed up here: overcoming traditional barriers. There might be companies or small businesses who don't want to hire people who are on probation or have a record. So banding together and creating a business together is a great way for them to gain, employment and to feel like they have a supportive network of people who understand them. Again, there's the shared rewards and challenges. Potential for higher income. A lot of the returning citizen co-ops that come out are definitely targeted on making a living wage and not just having to take any job that they can get with their record or their current situation. There's also a great voice in management and decision making. So some more of the opportunities are, say you have a group of um, remodeling experts and none of them really have administrative skills, or they don't have time as they're going out on jobs. You can share your administrative costs by having a centralized administrative person who you have come on, or each of the members takes a certain amount of time to do that work. You also have the shared marketing, shared legal. It's instead of each person trying to start their own business, you can share these responsibilities and costs. So there's challenges as with working with any group of people. Making sure that everyone has enough time for meetings and being able to schedule them for the group where everyone can make it. Some people work 9 to 5 and are trying to start the co-op, and so it can be a little challenging setting up the meeting. It's also, learning compromise and learning how to negotiate with other people so that, you're all working together for a shared goal and ideal. But with this compromising comes the sharing of the revenue and the sharing of management, leadership, and control, which some people maybe never had. They've, always maybe never been in upper management or ownership. So it's a great way to empower people. So Eva, I'm going to handle it back to you.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was great. And so next up we have Joseph Cureton, the Chief Coordinating Officer at the Obran Cooperative, the first worker-owned cooperative conglomerate, where his work focuses on bringing new worker-directed enterprises to life. He is a serial entrepreneur and founding member of Core Staffing, Be More, Black Techies, and TribeWorks, all projects that fight to overcome the challenges faced by modern workers. And as a side note, I used to live in Washington, D.C., and I remember hearing great things about the Core Staffing, the Returning Citizens Cooperative, as they were getting started. And my friend, Jerome Hughes, who provided them some legal counsel. And so a few years later, Core Staffing has become part of Obran Cooperative, and they've become really well known across the country. So we're really, really thankful to you, Joseph, for taking the time to speak with us. And we know you're really busy and appreciate it. So I'll just turn it over to Joseph now, and you can go ahead.
Thanks. And everybody, thank you. I'm going to try and put it on gallery so I can see some of your faces anyway. Hope that everybody is doing well today, and all things considered, and all of the current trauma that is happening in our lives, I hope that we can at least, take a deep breath and be okay. So I feel like the best place to start with today, I kind of wanted to structure this. So I was thinking through sort of like, what is the best way to structure this time that we have together? So I felt like maybe there could be both a tactical part of what we're talking about today. So like actionable things that you can take away, as well as some of the theory or theoretical side of this. So just some stuff to think about, right? Also, I do speak really fast. So, if when we're talking about translation and folks, please, Eva or anybody, feel free to just interrupt me and say, Joseph, slow the hell down. Like, I don't understand anything that you're saying. Also, if I use any jargon at all, also just say, Joseph, that's jargon. What the hell are you talking about? I want to understand what you're talking about, right? So, period, permission granted all the time. Please interrupt, right? So starting with that, I kind of want to start by presenting my screen. I'm going to use the crutch of a slide to get started. Can you see me here? Yay, nay, thumbs up? I can't see you anymore. All right, cool. So I like to start with the question, what if you own the place? You know, I think this is sort of like the crux of the matter for a lot of us. Ownership and the idea of ownership, the reality of ownership goes hand in hand with cooperatives. Not surprisingly, most folks, when they think about co-ops, the first thing that they think about is what, like, you know, the grocery or the bank or the, you know, some of the other sort of cooperatives that are all around us. But the central piece for us, for the cooperative that I'm a part of, is about ownership, is about the idea of ownership and the reality, the actual tactical ownership that comes with legal right to something. So I always like to start with, what if you owned it? Because our cooperative believes that anything under the sun, when it comes to production and the world around us, we want to question what would happen if we owned it. What would happen if we were actually in control of those assets or in control of that production, right? So we got started, and I'll talk a little bit about the cooperative, but I'll sort of harken back to Genesis here, to what we actually did to get started. So first things first, this cooperative was built by 3 guys from Baltimore City that didn't have 2 nickels to rub together, and we're in a halfway house saying, like, what the heck are we going to do for work? So everything that you're about to see, the genesis story of this, is literally folks just trying to make ends meet. In order to do so, they got together and decided to go to the world and say, let's do a staffing firm. Let's actually put our heads together and do exactly you know, what we did before, which was hire somebody to do, you know, the back office administrative tasks. But at the foundation of it, this was about common need and mutual aid. This was about people coming together, recognizing that they're stronger together, and recognizing that they have the capacity to do business in the market, not to make $1 million, but to make rent, right? To make their lives and livelihoods, their family fed, right? So that's where we come from. But where we're evolving to and what we are is also answering another question. And the other question is, what would happen if your work didn't actually mean a wage? What would happen if your work actually was a gift that you're able to give to the world? And that gift was able to support you in your livelihood and your family. But it wasn't because you solely have to work. It's because you wanted to give a gift. And so we moved from the idea of just mutual aid and common benefit and being able to actually pay your rent to saying, well, what would happen if we didn't have to do all of that? What would happen if our rent was taken care of and really we were working because we wanted to, because we wanted to support our fellow members? And so that's really what roots us today, and where we are right now is our mission is actually to change work into meaningful gifts, to make that reality possible in every sector of the economy. And we all know, most of us have the understanding that small business is just hard, just period, point blank. It is terrible. It is hard to do, right? Whether it's cost of capital. So, you know, I don't know about you, but I'm not a millionaire. Like, I didn't grow up that wealthy. I mean, I grew up wealthy enough, but not access to $1 million just like sitting around. You know, the market is hard too. People underestimate a lot how hard it is to just keep a business going. Whether that's pressure from regulation or taxes, or, you know, the ability for the business to survive with competition. Like, all of the market factors make being a small business owner super hard, and co-ops are not immune to that problem. So I also want a reality check when we're talking about cooperatives. A lot of co-op developers really undersell how hard it really is to run a business. And so I want to make sure that we're starting in that place first, that the problems of small business are not immune, or co-ops are not immune to them. So we want the solve for that. So the access to capital piece, right? The ability for us to actually have growth and a vision for growth, to be big and not be ashamed of being big. And management, having good, solid management, being able to say, yes, we've got, employment relationships that work. We've got, management relationships that are accountable to those employees, but that work and can actually make us money in the market, right? The ability to say no and yes is good, and the ability to have executive leadership is good. So not every cooperative uses consensus. So that's one other piece that I want to demystify here, is that not every cooperative, regardless of the type of cooperative, uses the same technique to manage their business either. And so we start with that. So what did we do to answer these questions and those challenges in the market? We created this idea, this holding company structure, because the story of Core, people coming together, mutual aid, trying to just make ends meet, really resonated with a completely different set of people, with software developers, literally people that make $150,000, $200,000 in the market, came together under the second thing we created, which was called Tribe. And they thought the same thing. They were like, that makes total sense. Why would I go to Adecco, Aerotech, the other technology staffing firms out there, and pay some investor 25% of my time just for the right to work? That doesn't make any sense to me, right? And Core, the business that we started that was run and led by people coming out of prison and jail, had figured it out, had really come to the understanding, foundational understanding of how to govern themselves, splitting the profit, taking some pieces for administrative overhead, understanding that you have to have management, and understanding that client relationships matter. They kind of had a model going. And so those two groups, very different, from very different socioeconomic backgrounds, came together and said, well, how do we make that square thing into the round hole of a cooperative? And the way that they did that was they actually created a holding company, and we're about to go through what that really means, but they created a holding company cooperative. And we didn't know this, but I think it's one of the first of its kind as far as the way in which we structured it. It wasn't our intention truly to be like groundbreaking or anything. Like, it was just common sense to us, sort of like, okay, well, you got two companies, why don't we just buy them from a third company and then we'll own the third company, duh, right? So, ultimately, again, the sort of through line here is just common sense, sort of easily deducible things from people that go to work every day to swing a hammer or cook some food, right? So co-ops, as we just talked about, are very different. But sometimes people think about co-ops as like all soups and sandals, or sort of petroleum oil and housing co-ops, right? So I want to demystify that for you as well, that like not all cooperatives also are sort of woo, right? Some cooperatives are really big businesses. So we'll talk about some examples of the two types, but I'm going to start on the left, and this is getting into a bit of the theory piece. So on the left is what's called a federalist cooperative. And what that means is, think about small businesses or small family farms coming together to produce something in the market or to buy together in the market, right? So one that you might know is like Ace Hardware. A bunch of small, independently owned family businesses generally that go to market under the same brand to sell products under Johnson's Ace Hardware, right? Johnson family owns that Ace Hardware, actually. It's not a franchise, right? So that's an example of a co-op that's a federalist model. An individualist model, you might know things like Equal Exchange or maybe your local credit union. Those are individualist cooperatives or co-ops that have human heartbeats at the center of it. People are the members, not businesses as the members. And so we decided that we always want, regardless of how much the person makes in the market, we always want at the center of the equation, a person, human being, heartbeats, all in the same space. And so for us, the other side of it that was really compelling is that there's trillions of dollars changing hands in the next 10, 20 years because folks are aging out of their businesses. Small business owners need a place to, land when it comes to their legacy businesses. And we felt like a lot of people, that is an opportunity for us to go out and actually catalyze workers, employees to become members of our cooperative. So I'll talk a little bit more about the structure, but the last piece is there's a growing network. We're not alone, obviously. I'm in a room full of folks that also get this, right? So we're not alone in this. This is not new information. We're building on the backs of giants here of being able to actually go to the small business owners or the community and say, this is what we're doing. It's no longer this really novel, super strange thing. It is acceptable business practice that just happens to be better aligned with our values, right? So ultimately, the last piece is we have to think through a team structure that made sense. And the way we structure our cooperative is that we have leaders in the cooperative. We do believe in executive talent. The difference being those leaders are accountable to their workers. Those leaders can be fired by their workers, and those leaders' pay is approved by their workers as well, right? So transparency and accountability are the sort of like cornerstones of how we think about leadership. But we love recruiting from top tier business schools. We think that it's great if you have experience in a previous business. We want you to be top of your field or whatever that might mean, but it doesn't negate the fact that you're responsible and accountable and transparent in what you're doing in the business, right? So I'm gonna go through structure, and this might be some practical takeaway stuff for you, right? So this might be some ways that you can go and actually use this stuff day to day in what you might want to do. So let's just use an example of like you said, small contracting company, right? I've got a couple of workers that we want to group up together, and we want to make a contracting company, and we're going to do some home renovation or home building, right? So ultimately, the first place that we start is actually at the business. What is it that you want to do? What are your income? What's the expenses? What are your fixed costs and variable costs? What are the things that make your business go? Regardless of the values, regardless of the mission, regardless of anything, what are the sort of inflows and outflows of cash, right, in your business? And if that works, first, if that works, then we go to the next step. Who do you want to be in your business? And so the operating business and the real estate asset, for us, we have to have at least 51% control of our underlying businesses. So we have to, the cooperative must own a majority of each of our small businesses underneath us. And the reason for that is because we want to be able to install leadership, and because we want to be able to democratically govern that business. So, but we start with the business first, and we think about an asset, we think about a market, and we go into that market. Then comes the employees. So, all right, if I'm a small contracting firm and I've got 5 guys together or 6 people together, and we're actually going out and making some money, and this is great, it's all working, that's awesome. But like, what about the accountable leadership and governance pieces? And also, what about the licensing? And what about the ability to get a loan, or the ability to get financing? What happens then, right? So for us, the way that we structure that is the cooperative itself is majority owned by the employees, by the workers underneath each of the businesses. And the cooperative is the actual entity that goes out and gets loans or gets financing or holds the licenses or does the things that it needs to do in the market. And that does 2 things. First, it allows us to go into any business, but then the second thing is it protects our workers day one. So if you have a record and you're coming into this business, it doesn't matter. You've got a corporate entity in front of you that you're able to actually leverage and utilize in the market. Second piece is it allows us to look at equity. It allows us to look at the percentage of profits at the end of the year as a percentage of work, as a percentage of the amount of time that you actually work with us. And we're a bit different. So the way that we actually structure our membership is it does cost money to be a member. $250 is a buy-in for a share price. The buy-in can be financed, so we can actually help you get to that $250 mark. You do pay 1% of your pay, your take home, as a contribution into an internal membership capital account. And what that does is it basically starts you into the ownership of the business. You have to wait 90 calendar days before you can join, and you have to attend at least 3 member meetings and work for at least 10 hours. That's like the bare minimum of what you need to do in order to participate within the cooperative. So how this is practical and useful for you. As you start your business, think about 2 things. One, what's the way that you're going to make money, right? Like, start there. How do you actually sell something for more than it takes to make it? Second piece, look at your membership. What is it that you actually have to give up in order to join? Whether it's time plus money, whether it's time plus money over time, right? So, it could be that it's just an initial buy-in, it could be that's initial buy-in over time. But what is it that makes your co-op able to actually join? Second thing, or last piece about this, is that we do like and rely on nonprofit, fiscally sponsored projects in order to do experiments. So whether that be research and development, research of an industry, looking at our products and developing new products, like, we are able to leverage philanthropic support or state support through nonprofit fiscal sponsorship of new programs. So a practical thing here is go to your network. See if you can actually figure out a way to finance through a nonprofit vehicle. It's a tool. It's a useful tool in the startup phase of your business. And then the last piece is we do believe that capital has a place on the table. It shouldn't be the loudest voice. It shouldn't be the most aggressive voice even. But in right relationship to labor, capital is good. It is a hammer. It is a tool to use. So don't be afraid of it. It is something that's there in the market to leverage. So for us, we do have investor memberships in the cooperative. That's really for 2 places. One is it allows our employee members, our worker owners, to, when they decide to leave, whether they're retiring or trying to find a new job, that's a place for them to park their money, their capital, in the cooperative if they so choose, right? So that's a place for them to actually have recurring benefit gains from the actual cooperative that they've built over time, if they decide to leave it as a worker owner. Now, of course, they don't have as much governance rights. They cannot control the business as much as a patron or as an employee member as they would as an investor member, of course. But that is a placeholder for them. The second piece is when we go to the market to buy companies, and I'll talk about that in a second. When we go to the market to buy companies or start them, we do believe that there should be capitalization at that level, at the business itself, equity or debt. But either way, we do believe that capital is a tool to use. It is not something to be afraid of. It is not something to mistrust. It is just a tool, and it's a hammer. You should use it, right? But use the right one. Don't use a finishing hammer to drive a stake, or don't use a sledgehammer to, put finishing. So, and the last piece here is, and some critical takeaway, we are actually what is called a conglomerate. And so we have a centralized support structure for our cooperative business, or for our member businesses underneath. So things like HR, R&D, accounting, that we can do together as businesses, we'll do it together. Things like business services, so how to make more sales in the market, or how to increase or decrease costs, we'll do those business services, strategic consulting, together as well. And those are internalized costs that we're all grouping up to get together, right? We also go to the market to raise capital together. So every business within the cooperative has access to our consolidated line of credit, as well as our ability by each business to raise for or on their behalf through our network as well. And then the last piece, and one of the most critical pieces, is member development and member support. Look, our business is still a bunch of folks that are, maybe have never owned a business before and need stuff like understanding governance and how to actually run a business, understanding like what it means to be a leader in a cooperative and how to be accountable to your workers, or case management and understanding how to actually put a budget together for yourself, right? all of those things are just necessary pieces of what makes a member successful in the cooperative context. And we do some weird stuff. So, don't get me wrong, we're not normal. We do some really weird stuff. Like, we house some of our members in our own properties. Like, we own 6 pieces of residential property here in Baltimore. And the reason that we did that was because our members were a bit, had a lot of housing instability. And so in order for them to be able to show up to work, we said, well, the benefit of being part of the business is we can raise money to buy houses to house you, right? And so if you pay your rent, it's not you're paying it to somebody else, you're paying down your own mortgage. So as an example of like a weird thing that we do, more like food programs or like other stuff like that. So I'm going to actually pause there for a second. I'm going to go into this sort of like last part. I'll do one more slide and then I'll go. I'll pause for a second. So, one last piece, and this is just a little bespoke to us, but something that you might want to consider when you're creating a cooperative is, what is the benefit to the member? And it's valuable for you to map out what is the benefit to the people that you're going into business with. And we generally think about it in 3 buckets. First is like you're an employee, right? So I got my employee hat on. I want the things that employees want. I want there to be wages that are, buckets, wages that are acceptable, right? I want there to be benefits. I want there to be, disability and training and like all the things that actually we want as workers, we should get, right? But there also should be 2 other buckets of benefits. One is the democratic management benefit that should come with worker cooperatives or employee ownership. And that's first, the ability to say yay or nay to executive pay and compensation. So the ability to say yay or nay to the leadership's incentives to run the business. The second is the ability to say yay or nay to profit sharing. So it's in our best interest to take care of our members, but our members also need to understand that it's in their best interest to grow the cooperative. And so that's the sort of fine line that you want to walk. And then third and fourth, or sort of like the third sort of bucket, is the member benefits themselves. So for us, again, it costs money to join our cooperative, but it's not just money that you just put into a pot and you'll never see. It's money that goes into an account that is yours, that you have access to. And so we use that to do things like co-op-wide profit sharing. At the end of the year, we debit or credit that account, your account, based on the profitability of the cooperative or the losses of the cooperative. So there's risk associated with that as well. The second piece is we do something, again, we're really weird, where we actually give access to that capital account balance because some folks don't have accounts. Some folks don't have bank accounts. And so we basically use it like a debit. We use their internal capital accounts like a small credit union. And other benefits that we have, like we randomly house people, as an example. Like we look at this as sort of like those 3 big buckets of membership. And really, at the end of the day, as you are starting to form and build your own cooperative, think about the buckets of how your members are going to benefit from being a part of it, and really work towards those end goal, that end state. And incrementally, you got to build up step by step. But at the end of the day, that's really what you're in it for. I believe that's really what you're in it for. Is really the maximum benefit that your members can have from being a part of your organization. So I'll stop there. I've got some more to share, but I wanted to pause and check in for time. How are we with time?
We still have 45 minutes for the program. If you want to take maybe another 5-10 minutes, and then there are a couple questions that we got in advance for you. Yeah, and there might be a couple more. So if you want to talk a little more about core staffing, if that's possible, or whatever else.
Yep. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time, and then we'll go back. So, all right. So my ugly mug in the middle here, but so let's talk about CORE specifically. So CORE is a literal staffing agency, and really, I guess the best part and the best place to start here is we, as the cooperative, started because of what I said: 3 guys in Baltimore City that were trying to figure out how to find work. But really, we realized that staffing is the most naked of all businesses, that there's no difference, to us anyway, there was really little difference between a staffing firm and a construction firm and the rest of it. But at the end of the day, we didn't have anything to sell except for our time. We're selling meat by the pound, as staffing agency professionals like to say. And it's a disgusting industry also. So that's the other piece of it. We thought that it was one of the most vile places, vile types of businesses out there. The most discriminatory, the sort of worst actors in the sort of like sales team and the back office. And really the way that staffing firms made money is by exploiting their workers. And so for us, we felt like we could do it just a little bit differently. At the very least, we changed the incentive structure of the leadership to be accountable and the things that I was talking about before. And at least that might make it better. But then the other piece was, well, all right, how are we actually going to pay for somebody to go out and sell? Right? How are we going to actually pay for somebody to start the business? And the way that they did that is actually they put in 50 cents out of their own. So I'm talking about all the members of CORE, the initial starting point. Put 50 cents an hour basically into a pot and said that 50 cents an hour is what we're going to use to pay for a website, what we're going to use to pay for a payroll system, what we're going to use to pay for back office, what we're going to use to pay for whatever, right? We ended up adjusting that to be the 250 and then the 1%, but that was our genesis. That's how we got started, right? So it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to make some grandiose plan and vision and schematic. It could be as simple as getting 5 people together and saying, we're going to contribute 50 cents out of our day or out of our hour, our pay rate, our take home, in order to actually start the business, right? Easy as that. And ultimately, the governance of the business also followed suit. It was organically grown, right? Basically, the ability for them to say, or for all of us at that point, to say, well, we need to hire professional management. It was a decision that everybody made. And then they made a decision about who can make decisions about those things as the next step, right? So the first decision was we all shouldn't be making decisions about what new markets to go into. Got it? Great. And then the next decision, the very next one was, okay, well, we need to hire somebody that does want to do that, right? I mean, it was a realization of capacity, a realization of where they fell short and what they needed, and a realization that they could go out and get it, right? That you don't have to be all things. I really don't expect everybody to be an accountant, as an example, right? But every business needs an accountant, sort of a thing. So that's that. And then maybe another little piece is like how we actually expand. So I want to sort of move to this really quickly. So how we started, again, was Core and Tribe and bringing in. What we actually did was we acquired those 2 businesses. So the Cooperative formed. We had our initial membership being the members of Core Staffing and the members of Tribe Works. And then we bought those 2 entities, those 2 LLCs. One was a Delaware C Corp, one was an LLC. We bought those 2 businesses. And that really got us thinking about how we can buy more businesses, how we can actually convert more things. And again, who were making these decisions? This was people coming out of prison and jail in Baltimore City, still working a 9 to 5 in most cases, and making these moves, making these things happen. So I don't want to, like, I know that we've got sleek slides and all the rest of it, but like at the end of the day, this is like us going to our local impact hub and like sitting down and like over coffee and making these type of decisions together. So, period. But that being said, what we decided though was that we really wanted to make this opportunity, the ability to join our cooperative, available to anybody in the country. Anybody that has an idea to start a cooperative or is part of an existing business. We thought, like, answering that first question that we asked, what if they owned it? We wanted that ability to actually be real. We wanted that opportunity to actually have legs. And so for me, it feels like as you're going through and starting your business, think about maybe it's actually not the best thing to do to start a business. Maybe the best thing to do is to look at what existing businesses are out there and buy one, right? There's so much opportunity right now for those small business owners that are trying to retire to sell it. It's actually easier to start from 1 than it is to start from 0. So that's the other sort of like practical advice. And it doesn't mean that you have to be an expert in mergers and acquisitions. Like, there's plenty of resources out there for people. It's more about starting the co-op and then allowing that co-op to go out and search for businesses to buy, and then having the framework for membership that those businesses can fall under. And you don't, again, you do not have to be a professional at that. All you need to do is have at least a couple of people willing to sit down and make some decisions together. So I'll end there before I get too late, and we can talk about some of the questions. All right. Hope that was helpful.
Thank you so much, Joseph. That was really wonderful and informative. So we had a couple of questions before, and I apologize. We apologize for not sending these to you in advance. What numerical impact has core staffing had on the recidivism rate and economic resiliency of its workforce? So I know that may be a hard question to answer,
Not really.
but if you want to give it a shot, go ahead.
Yeah, not really. I mean, like we had, so out of the 35 or so members that were part of, or that are part of the cooperative that are core members specifically, um, average, so in Baltimore City, your average staffing rate is about $12.50 to $13 an hour, just as a metric, right? To understand. We start at $14.50 and go up from there. So generally, like day one, minute one, you're making a better wage, right? So that's just one metric. Second metric is sort of recidivism rate in Baltimore City, just to give you a little bit of an understanding, is around 51% generally. So about half the people that come out go right back in the first year, right? So our first year hurdle of 51%, we're generally hovering around like 90, 95% non-recidivism or whatever the hell that is. So I think out of our 35 people, only one person has gone back to jail, as an example, you know, of what that looks like. And really that's about, again, we like do weird stuff like we buy houses for people because we don't want them to sleep in a car, right? So like, you know, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into that that is not directly tied to the bottom line of the cooperative. Some of it is sweat equity, some of it is like unpaid labor, and some of it is also fungible support from community, i.e. not something, again, that shows up on the balance sheet or P&L of a staffing. Last piece is for core specifically, staffing is a terrible business also, just FYI. So don't start a staffing firm. So I'm going to put that out there again. Staffing is an absolutely terrible business. Here's why. You are at the behest of a client, and that client, the preconceived notion in a temp agency is that you're using a disposable resource. So the client relationship is set up, A, based on the disposability of your time, and B, predicated on the idea that you're gonna churn, predicated on the idea that they won't need you in a couple of months or whatever, right? So it's actually terrible business. So I would not actually say start there. But what it teaches you, what the cooperative or what the staffing agency taught us, is that you got to focus on people. You got to actually focus on keeping people engaged in the business through all of the mechanisms of community and membership and accountability and leadership and all the things that make a staffing agency sticky for people, meaning that people stay with the staffing agency and want another job the next week. We had to get good at that in order for us to be able to actually, in any way, shape, or form, keep a business afloat within staffing. But again, do not start this. We do what you want, but like it would not be my first decision to start a staffing firm. It would be my first decision to start something that is either in, you know, you're selling a product or you're packaging your services in a way that is repeatably sold. So as an example, like a consulting project or a project-based thing that you're doing, painting, or you're doing XYZ, whatever, you know, construction project. Don't sell your time as a commodity on the open market because people don't value it. Which is the last piece is like, you know, it's my job, it was my job to basically hammer out contracts with clients. And basically, you know, my goal is to get as high of a billable rate as possible. And that's it, is like, try and extract as much from that contract value as possible. And I was pretty good at it. Like at the end of the day, you know, it's all about having somebody with with that ability to go out and hammer out contracts with folks. That is there. And last piece is from a high road employer standpoint, we lucked out when it came to our core clientele. We went after folks that were high road employers anyway, that really understood the value of what we were trying to do. And, you know, our market segment was not like the, had some warehousing and all the rest of it, but our market segment was not the lowest wage, highest volume staffing work, right? We went up market instead of saying down market with volume, at the expense, honestly, of size, of volume, of number of people. So that's also there.
Thank you. We had a question from Jake Carlo. I'm not sure if he's still here. It was a bit more specific to Baltimore. Jake, are you still on the phone? I'm thinking maybe I can just email that to you and just how to get involved in local Baltimore cooperative work. Most of the other people here are from New Mexico, I think. And I don't think he's here anymore. But does anyone else have, like, maybe we can take one more question from if there's any. I don't think we missed any in the chat. Does anyone just want to ask Joseph any questions out loud? And then we'll have another period at the end for general questions.
We have a raised hand from Carol Hack. Carol, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Sorry, Carol, I think you're still on mute there.
Mute. There we are.
There you go.
There we go.
Yay.
So yes, I've been tossing around this idea of starting I was going to just start out small, but to do a co-op would be larger than what I was thinking. So, but ultimately it might work to where if I started out a podcast and then it turned into a self-care type of consultation service for people that are having a really hard time. And it's along the lines of like a medical, not medical, but just consulting. It would be, I'm assuming that's what it would fall under. And that wouldn't be too hard to put like together a hotline or, I mean, there would be some startup costs there as well, but I would not know how to even begin something like that. So maybe looking at what you're saying, looking at something that's along those lines, maybe, then I could set that up as a self-care type of agency.
Carol, are you in New Mexico?
Yes.
If you'd like to talk with us at Cooperative Catalyst, I don't know if you have a particular question for Joseph.
I was just wondering what he thought about a service like that. Would that be something similar to an agency like he's doing? Would that be a harder one to start? I guess would be the question.
Well, how about, yeah, I'll answer by telling you a little bit about how we think about building businesses. So we think about building businesses like we draw a circle and we say who's inside of that circle and who's outside of that circle. If you're outside of the circle, how do you give us money? And what the things that the people that are inside of the circle do to get the money, right? And then what are the things inside of the circle that people need? And then how do we actually provide those things with the money that we actually get into the circle? So it's a very simple drawing. And so if at the end of the day, you can provide somebody with something that they'll pay you for, how are you then going to grow the amount of podcasters in the circle, right? And can you direct those podcasters that are in the circle to funnel their energies towards the same value that you just said, right? I mean, at the end of the day, for me, it's like your ability to group up with other small podcasters is really the question here. And then how do you direct those small podcasters into one or two or three products or services that you can group up and sell together? So, I mean, it's all doable. The question is like, is it valued in the market? Do people want it? Is really the question. And then growing that inner circle, growing that pie of podcasters is probably the next question that you're asking.
You know,
Maybe
I
like
had
buying mics or whatever. I don't know what they need, but like buying stuff together.
I had people from out of state who were interested in it. I really I have a friend in California who's interested, a friend in Ohio who's interested in the same type
I
of
would
thing.
say,
I have,
yep, I would say go ahead and get them together. And I think like Eva said, like I think if you're in New Mexico, you know, Paddles is a perfect person to go to for governance support, as an example.
thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, well, actually, Caitlin, would you mind just sharing our info in the chat? We'll share it at the end as well. There's a couple other questions that we're sending privately. Have advice for how to raise awareness navigator on barriers to entry to people with criminal records, such as occupational licenses, business licenses, or access to resources like bank loans?
Totally. So a couple of things. I think that you can only fight one battle at a time. So I think that getting flanked is like, I'm going to use war analogies here just because I feel like literally having experienced what oppression looks like, it does feel a lot like getting flanked all the time, getting your knees cut out from under you. So, you know, you can only fight one battle at a time. So to me, it feels like the battle we chose to fight was not advocacy and policy change. We are not a political like actor in Baltimore or Maryland or whatever. Like that is not our bag. We think that there should be that, and we totally value that as a thing. But that's for other folks to do. And I think like for us, we really want to make sure that we can protect our members and be able to actually support them in their work. So I would say the first thing, the most political thing that you can do is build a business that makes more income than it does expenses in order to profit and then have those profits directly impact the livelihoods of the members. That's the first thing. Second thing is from a licensing standpoint, use people that have the ability to get licensed, hire them, and then pay them for their time. So, you know, period. And then get to work. You know, it's like, to me, it feels like that's really the best sort of advice that I can say is like, there's always a way around it. You know, if they need to have personal guarantee and they feel weird about having a personal guarantee, pay them for it, right? You know, like, period. That's value that they're exchanging for time, right? So, you know, to me, it feels like you're always going to come up with barrier, or there always will be barriers, systems of oppression that will come up against you. And like the point is to find the judo move around it. Like the point is to like figure out how to actually make ends meet and support your members. So, I mean, I know that might be like a non-answer to it, but like we don't currently, we aren't in the sort of like, what is it, the government capture space yet, but like maybe we'll get there one day when we get giant. But like, you know, we're not like out in Capitol Hill advocating, we're like swinging hammers, so.
Thank you. One more, I think this will be our last one. How long have you operated and what businesses have you acquired? Which I thought you may have answered, but if you want to clarify.
Yep. So we started in 2016 with core staffing. So that is our oldest business, actually. And so we made our first acquisition with Tribe Works in 2018. Oh, sorry, 2019. 2019, we had a subsequent acquisition of Appalachian Field Services, which is a construction firm. And then we started two other firms, Rising, which is a property manager, asset manager, and Break Room, which is a technology, like it's a small SaaS application that targets enterprise clients for like virtual meeting things. It's like kind of a frilly thing, but makes a lot of money, so it's great. You know, at the end of the day, yeah, so that is what we are currently. So the way that we go to market, maybe what might be ambiguous is when I say like we build groups is, so we go into a market first. So as an example, staffing is a market for us. So Tribe and Core are staffing enterprises. They're actually, you know, they sell human time, right? We also think about other markets and we build into other markets. So as an example, we have the real estate market, which has the construction firm, asset manager, and property manager, as well as we're starting a health vertical search, which means we're looking at home health, both home care and home health, you know, skilled nursing facilities as a vertical. So we probably won't make an acquisition until midway through this year, or a joint venture midway through this year. But that's how we actually start businesses now, is we don't actually do individual operating companies. We look at a market and then make an acquisition against the thesis in the market. But maybe that's a little bit more clarifying. But current operating businesses, core staffing, Triboard, Break Room, and Rising, as well as local people services.
All right, thank you so much. That was really, really awesome. And
Thank you.
we in New Mexico would love to continue the conversation, of course, because we're also interested in conversion. So if anyone wants to join in that conversation, just contact us. I think someone will put our contact information in the chat and we'll have it at the end. So we really appreciate it. If you want to stay till the end too, you're welcome, but no worries. If you need to get going. I know it's late there.
Yeah, I'm gonna hop off. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.
Thank you, Joseph.
So much,
All right.
very inspiring.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we are going to turn it back over to Mary, and she's going to talk a little bit about a couple of other returning citizens cooperatives and some other different industries that exist around the country and world, I think.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. That was great. It was really nice to have Joseph. So I'm going to talk about some co-op prisoner returning citizen co-ops around the world. They're everywhere from Canada to Ethiopia. In Puerto Rico, the League of Cooperatives works with Corrections Department to establish worker-producer co-ops among incarcerated people inside their facilities. 4 worker co-ops currently exist over in Puerto Rico. They are in industries such as art, solar, technology, and then they have a sewing co-op in the women's prison. Prisoner-run co-ops slash recidivism rates by over 80% in Puerto Rico. There's about 100 social cooperatives in Italy working in prisons. So their ministry statistics say recidivism rate is about 80% normally, but the recidivism rates for those employed by social cooperatives are less than 10%. In Italy, they began with art therapy and learned about the co-op model and demanded co-op education. So the co-op law was changed and they created a MOU with the corrections department for 15% off, or I'm sorry, they paid 15% for office space, electricity, etc. And they pay for extra security, and it has 10% retained the prisoners and 75% to the owners. Only 2 recidivists of the 50 who got out over the 10 years. So only 2 of those members actually did recommit a crime. In Canada, imprisoned artists and community artists own a marketing craft cooperative together, and it aids the incarcerated artists in obtaining the supplies they need, supports their art, and helps to sell the finished projects. So some questions that we want to ask is, how do we bring these models to the United States? What do we need to know, which is, outreach like this, and who do we need to influence? What policies and laws need to be changed so that we can have these type of programs in the United States, and who's going to lead these movements? Those are some questions to ask yourselves and that we try to ask with our outreach and with our lawmaking outreach. So some returning citizen co-ops in the United States are Compost Co-op, and they haul food scraps for residential and commercial customers in Greenfield and Watley. As the topsoil is eroding, they help with that in that area. And then they also give a living wage, build ownership and opportunity among people coming out of jail, providing equity and reducing climate change. A big group that is working with returning citizens is Collective Remake in Los Angeles. They do art, business education, jobs, recycling, sustainability, and they work all around LA County, and also partner with the creation of worker-owned businesses and other kinds of cooperatives with people who've been incarcerated. So they've already assisted people with creating an art co-op, and that supports artists both inside and outside of the prison. Another great one, and this is a wonderful group in Chicago, and it was a couple women who were released from prison and decided to maybe band together to create a worker co-op producing food items. And they were trying to empower formerly incarcerated women and give themselves a second chance, and to show others in different communities that they could do this for themselves. So, they were starting this co-op, and it actually started at the beginning and then of the pandemic. So the pandemic hit, and, they were afraid that, that might be the end of the co-op, but actually it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. And so they were able to partner with some of the cities groups to get meals out to communities that were affected more by the COVID time period. And so they create meals for seniors and different groups that may not have access to fresh food or meals during this pandemic. So it worked out well for them, and they're doing great. They banded together with 4 or 5 other women, and they've been very successful. So Eva, did we want to talk about the cooperatives in a legal sense?
I don't know that we were planning on it, but does anyone want to raise their hand if they want to hear about legal? We were just wondering if you had questions about that. I don't have to go into it right now, but can you just raise your hands maybe if you're interested?
Or you
Do
can
have
put it in the chat and we can go
Yeah.
over it when we get to
got somebody in the chat says yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. So it's certainly not a simple answer, but I guess what I would say is I think of there being 3 definitions of cooperatives. One, basically an informal kind of organization that may not be incorporated, but just follows cooperative principles, and isn't necessarily concerned about using the cooperative name or benefiting from the cooperative tax structure. So that's kind of like in your sort of whatever your informal sense, I would say. And then there's 2 more like formal ways to form a cooperative, or maybe more. But these are the ones I think about. There's a cooperative association or a corporation, depending on which state you're incorporating in. This is, again, a state law thing, like any other business. You incorporate within a state or a tribe. So you can incorporate as something called a cooperative association. That is, again, next to the LLCs, the nonprofits, the other corporations, that's an option. And then with that option, you know that you're going to get your cooperative, 1 worker, 1 member, 1 vote, profits distributed on the basis of patronage. All of that is built into that cooperative law. And so therefore it will be, it's required that the company operate like a cooperative with basically the main principles for forever. So no investors can come and change it into anything else. And it provides some nice guidance on basically how to structure. However, it's a little bit, some people think it's a little rigid and it doesn't work for all purposes. So then you could also just form a cooperative by forming an LLC is a popular way to form a cooperative, and you just build the cooperative structure into your LLC. And if you actually do want to use cooperative in the name, and also benefit from a system of cooperative taxation, which we haven't really talked about, but there are some tax benefits to cooperatives as opposed to corporations. Then you would need to have one member, one vote in your structure. So you can't have investors that are buying votes. So every member, whether it be a worker or a producer, has one vote regardless of the investment. And then the profits again are distributed based on the members' contribution to the cooperative. So that may be hours worked, or art sold, product sold, product bought, something like that. And then you can have nonprofits that are kind of more democratically structured. They wouldn't have profit, so it'd be somewhat irrelevant. We're happy to, if you have an idea, which, we have a whole process for developing a cooperative, or I guess converting a cooperative. And I'm an attorney, so I'm happy to talk to you about your specific situation. Okay. Do you want to keep going with the slides, or are we kind of moving into general questions or something? I don't know if you had other plans, Mary.
Yeah, I'm going to go into kind of what Cooperative Catalyst does and our process, and then we'll go to the questions. If I can get the slide to change. Okay, how Cooperative Catalyst can help you. And what we do is we follow a proven method that's worked in the past and that we're working on now to guide people from, this initial contact, which is what we're doing today, reaching out, to Spark, which is when, you contact us and we kind of have a meeting, and all the way down to going into business, launching, and being in business, ongoing business, and then becoming a cooperative partner. As part of the principles I discussed in the beginning, cooperatives, fostering other cooperatives is part of the benefit and the draw to have people form cooperatives, both in the state and throughout the country. So where do you start? The first thing that you would do if you're interested in or have questions about starting a co-op, or referring people to perhaps starting co-ops. One of the things I forgot to mention is, if you have an incarcerated family member, the family could actually start a co-op while their loved one is in the system. And then when they're released, they actually have, automatic job placement and can go into business with the co-op that's already been started. So it's a great incentive both for when people are still in the system and when they come out and are on probation or parole or beyond. So you want to reach out to us. We have some emails at the end, or email addresses at the end that you can contact. We also have our website, and we give that information as well. And we even have a Facebook group. The next thing you would do is we help you develop your idea. So what's your idea? Do you want to do a home remodeling? Do you want to do a childcare, a producer of art, or any kind of agriculture venture? Do you want to save a mom and pop shop that might be going under and they need someone to take over, and say it's a small town and the grocery store is going to go out of business and that's the only one for 50, 75, 100 miles. So why not approach them as a group and perhaps buy the grocery store as a co-op, and that way you keep it in the area and keep those services, and it benefits the whole community and the people who are taking over. So there's conversions, and then there's starting from scratch. And what we do is we help you with the marketing strategy, determining leadership and governance, and then, project planning and launching. And as I said, the other parts of the roadmap. So we work with a lot of different industries. As I said, we work with agriculture. We work with a women's sewing group, producer co-ops. There's a women's remodeling group that's wanting to start, and childcare. Different service providers, massage or bodywork type businesses. And then also with that conversions, some small businesses you don't want to go under, or they want to give back to their employees who've been really loyal. So the employees actually take over and buy the cooperatives. So, if you're interested or know someone that is, or even if you have a few questions, we're not going to high pressure you into the sales, but definitely contact us and we will try to help you. And if we don't know the answer, we'll definitely find it out for you. So here's where we'll get into discussion and questions. Again, I will put our contact information on the next slide, but let's start with some questions that we received prior
Thanks,
to.
Mary. I think we got a question out in the chat just
Okay.
now. We can start with that, and then maybe we can dig into a couple of the questions that came in advance if
Sounds
there's
good.
some time. So this question comes from Elmer Jackson, and Elmer would like to know if we have alliances with other area organizations like the New Mexico Direct Caregivers Association or the Credit Union Association. I'm not totally sure off the top of my head about the New Mexico Direct Caregivers Association. I don't know if any of my colleagues can speak to that. But the credit union associations, I mean, part of what one of our big goals at CCNM is to develop this generative cooperative ecosystem. And so we really see that as being a very important part of that is building these partnerships in a wide range of industries, both private, public, all different types of stakeholders. And the Credit Union Association is a really big one. So we're currently in the process of mapping and analyzing the cooperative ecosystem in the state. So the Credit Union Association is definitely somebody on that list that we're looking to partner with more deeply to build out the work that we're doing here and get the message out. We are open to all and any ideas people have, and we want individuals that are interested in cooperatives, such as yourselves, people that are here today, to be engaged in our ecosystem as well. But to your exact question, I don't know, Eva, Sandra, or Robin, if you have a sense about the Direct Caregivers Association, because that does sound like a good one we could be reaching out to build home healthcare and childcare cooperatives. I don't know if you have...
Sandra has in communication with the director there, Adrian Smith.
Yeah. Terrific.
We do talk with them from time to time, and they're cooperative. We are actually also working with a different home health aid cooperative, but particularly that serves immigrants, and it has a little bit of a different model from the one that already exists, Hard as Home, particularly because it's all Spanish-speaking immigrants, so they're developing in their particular way.
Mm-hmm. And Elmer, we did get your question in advance too, which I think I can pull that up. It was just about generally, right? How are we marketing, ourselves and our goals? And so I think part of it is doing events like this, trying to reach directly to different communities that are maybe going to be interested in co-ops. But yeah, it's all about building partnerships and relationships with aligned organizations, and trying to really steep ourselves in community to get the word out there. And of course, we do some traditional social media marketing and things like that. And that's something we'll be expanding on in the year ahead too. Thank you.
Caitlin and Eva, would you mind if I just elaborated on that a little bit? Because I think Elmer, that's an important question, and thank you for your support through this period of time in other ways as well. You know, the development of a cooperative ecosystem is one that is best done by a whole group of other people who are involved in cooperatives in one way or another. And so that's one of our intentions over the next year, is to work towards accomplishing, you know, pulling together people who are interested in a policy agenda that relates to cooperatives and democratic ownership in general. I also happen to see one other person who might have a comment on that specific question. Erin, do you want to, I don't want to put you on the spot for something different, but do you have a comment that you would like to make?
Sandra, you're talking to Erin Sanborn?
Yes, that would be the Erin I'm talking to.
You want to, what's the specific question? Or
So the question was pulling together a policy agenda that's related to cooperatives in New Mexico and how we can go about working with our legislators and developing a more supportive environment. I'm paraphrasing you, Elmer, so please correct me if I got that wrong.
I think it's a brilliant idea, because I think that co-ops support the uniqueness, I mean, of lots of different places, but of New Mexico in particular. And I think if, as people understand the value of co-ops and they see the long history from the electric co-ops to the acequias and the ditch meetings that we have and everything else, they'll see how important they are to the long-term economic diversification. So if there is any way to develop, you know, a policy around that, I would be very interested.
Thank you both. We know how to find you, so watch out, both of you.
I think there's just time for maybe one more question, and I'm trying to find people who are here and ask questions in advance who are still here. And there's someone named Nigel Tharp who asked, how do cooperatives operate with a trust? And I'm not sure if that was sort of a legal question around like a trust as in a legal trust and that type of entity, or whether there was, do you want to further clarify that question, Nigel? Okay, I don't know if he knows that I'm asking him or her. Is Nigel her, he, him, she, they? Anyway, okay, we'll just skip that one for now. Is maybe one more. Does anyone, I don't see anyone else who like asked questions who's here. I don't, maybe Daniel Torres, is that person here?
Well, I think you could either just, oh, he's here. Daniel's here.
It said, what does New Mexico have in terms of lobbying support to foster cooperative organization growth in the central Rio Grande Valley? Maybe that's a Caitlin question.
Sorry, the question was, what does New Mexico have in terms of lobbying support to foster cooperative organization growth in the central Rio Grande Valley? Yeah, so currently I would say, I mean, to be honest, we have pretty limited capacity on our staff to do lobbying. We're mostly engaged in trying to provide technical assistance and kind of education. But as we continue to build out our ecosystem, this cooperative ecosystem, we're really hoping to engage a network of stakeholders and co-op supporters that can help to support lobbying efforts. I think that lobbying is better when it's a group and not just only one organization. So this is an open invitation to get anybody involved that's interested in helping with that kind of effort. We do currently engage with as many friendly legislators as we can to kind of put co-ops on the forefront of their mind. And we're looking to build out those efforts in the months and years ahead. We are partnered with New Mexico Thrives, which is the statewide organization for nonprofits. And we've been working with them on some legislative on a legislative agenda item that they're pushing around economic diversification and looking to include both cooperatives and nonprofits in those economic diversification efforts. So I would say, you know, unfortunately, the answer is like we don't have a ton of resources to do lobbying right now, but it's something we're really looking to build out in the future and would love to get you involved with that effort. And I don't know if there's anything anybody else wants to add to that.
What, Kate, what will that look like? I think you already covered it, but could you repeat it for me?
Sorry, yeah, I think that what I was saying was in the years and months ahead, we're hoping to create a network of co-ops, of existing co-ops, and of cooperative associations. So some of those groups that were mentioned earlier, like the credit union associations and the electric co-op associations here in New Mexico, and having that group and individual members come together to shape a policy agenda that would put you know, co-ops front and center, and that any kind of lobbying efforts, I think, are best done as a group and have a lot more impact when it's, you know, a number of individuals and organizations coming together to push those efforts. But currently, CCNM doesn't do a ton of lobbying or legislative advocacy because we are mainly focused on providing like direct technical assistance to folks that are looking to start cooperative businesses and organizations. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yes. I was just wondering how, you know, I could get involved in something like that. I'm interested, so I'll talk to you guys later about it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, we've got you on our list and on our radar, and we will promise to stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're a couple minutes over 3:30. I don't know, Mary or Eva, if you have any, or if anybody else has other questions they want to ask at this time.
Yeah, I just shared our contact information. So I'm sorry, was someone talking?
I
Okay.
don't think so.
All right. We shared our contact information in the chat, and then I also shared the screen. So if you need to contact us, if there's something you forgot to ask, or if you want more information on, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we're able.
Sorry, and one last quick thing for those who are still here. Thank you for sticking around. I'm going to put a link to an evaluation form in the chat. It really helps us to be able to report back to our excellent funders how we're doing, and we'd love your feedback on today's presentation. So I'm going to put that link in the chat, and I will follow up with an email with that as well. But it would be much appreciated if you could fill that out. It helps us a lot to just improve what we're doing, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding everyone. All right, you guys have a great weekend. Thank you very much for attending. It was great. We had some great questions and some great dialogue, and we appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
I think we can stop the recording, or I just did stop the recording.